Divorcing you was definitely the right choice. You and your child are still just as sad as ever. I make $200,000 a year now. It seems like my ex-husband just wants to brag about himself. He doesn't even bother to ask about how we're doing. Oh, by the way, let me introduce you to someone. Hey, come here. This is my new wife, Harriet, he says, introducing me to his new spouse. What on earth is he thinking? Are we done here? Well then bye, I say, trying to leave. Wait a minute, he says, blocking my path again. Are you just jealous because we look happy? Just because you're poor doesn't mean you have to be so twisted. You'll end up even more miserable, you know. He assumes that I'm unhappy. I'm past feeling angry and now just feel disgusted. While I stay silent, my ex tries to say something else. But my son Johnny interrupts. Mom, can we fire this guy? Hi, my name is Lisa, and I am now 42 years old. I married George, my co-worker at the same company, when I was 26. I continued to work after we got married but quit when I became pregnant. Later, our son Johnny was born. Now that Johnny has turned 7 and started elementary school, parenting has settled down a bit. I thought it might be time to start working outside the home again, so I talked to my husband about it. He agreed right away, almost like he was waiting for me to suggest it. He probably thinks it would help our household budget if I started working, but he's been rushing me about it. Have you found something yet? He asks. Not yet. I'm looking carefully, I reply. Just find something, he says, seeming to want me to work no matter what. When I mention looking for a part-time job, he suggests, if you're going to work, why not full-time? If that seems too much, it doesn't have to be 5 days a week. How about 3 days, 8 hours each? Johnny isn't completely independent just because he's in elementary school. He comes home early, you know. But my husband insists Johnny can go to after-school programs. Full-time 5 days a week would be best, he keeps recommending. He seems to want me to work long hours. I can't complain since I was the one who said I wanted to work. But I haven't worked in years, so I'm nervous. Ultimately, I'd like to get used to it gradually, even if I do work full-time. I feel bad about quitting if I find it too hard after trying. So for now, I've decided to work part-time, about 20 hours a week. My husband complained that full-time would be better right away, but he reluctantly agreed when I said I'd consider it if I could handle it. I didn't think he cares so much about our finances. I found him a bit nagging about my job search, but I was also pleased. It's better to have a spouse who considers the finances than one who's unconcerned about it, especially in a long-term relationship. But I would later realize this perception was mistaken. A few months after I started my part-time job, a message came to my phone. Wondering who it was, I checked and saw a very familiar name. My former colleague and also my husband's current colleague. I thought it had been a long time and casually read the message. Then I was so shocked by the content that I raised my voice. What? What does this mean? This must be a joke. The message said, long time no see. I saw your husband the other day looking very friendly with some woman. I thought he might be cheating, so I sent you this message. The message was informing me of my husband's affair. It even thoughtfully included pictures. I was deeply shaken. The person in the photograph was clearly my husband, and the woman he was arm in arm with was a stranger to me. Even if it was a woman I knew, being arm in arm like that would be totally wrong. As I was reeling from the shock of the photographs, another message was sent. This woman is actually the division manager's daughter. She's an employee at our company, so she of course knows your husband's married. They're so brazen, aren't they? I wonder if all young folks are like this now. It was obvious from my colleague's message that she was enjoying this gossip. I replied with thanks and closed the messaging app. I never thought my husband would cheat on me, but when I thought about it, many things started to make sense, especially how he had been pushing me to work hard even when I wasn't settled with childcare. He must have thought it would give him more time to cheat. And today, he's supposedly away on an overnight business trip. It's probably a lie to spend quality time with his mistress. The next day, when my husband came home, I confronted him immediately. I knew that if we were going to divorce, I should keep a straight face and gather evidence, but I couldn't pretend everything was okay. What is this all about? I demanded, showing him the picture. My husband was taken aback for a moment, but quickly recovered and defiantly responded, if you know, then it can't be helped. It's exactly as you see. I was surprised. I had expected some kind of excuse. The woman is the division manager's daughter, right? I asked. The division manager is destined to move up even higher in the company. You understand what I'm saying? To be blunt, I'd gain more from marrying this woman. It would guarantee my promotion. She's younger and prettier than you two, he said with a disdainful expression. I thought that if he cried and apologized, I wouldn't go as far as divorcing him because of our child Johnny. But this attitude of his, what was this? He didn't seem to feel guilty about cheating at all. He even brazenly compared me to his mistress, saying she was better than me. Was he really this kind of man? I was so disappointed. As I remained silent, he grew more confident and continued. Well, that's how it is. I think we should divorce. It's a bit sooner than planned, but I was going to tell you eventually, so this is good timing. And so we divorced. After being told all that, I couldn't even pretend I didn't want to divorce. It was better for my mental health to quickly get the child support and divide the property and then divorce. He paid the child support at the amount I asked for, and he gave me almost all the property. Naturally, I got custody of Johnny. He was planning to marry the division manager's daughter. He seemed to feel that a little money was no big deal. When he left the house, he parted with the words, "Do your best to scrape by. Raising a child on a single income won't lead to wealth. Unlike you, I'm joining the ranks of the rich. The division manager's family is wealthy after all. We probably won't meet again, so struggle on at the bottom." Those were unbelievable words for a man who had a child of his own blood. I was relieved from the bottom of my heart to be rid of such a man. Although I felt relieved mentally, daily life was indeed hard. Even though I had received child support and property, I didn't have much savings, so I needed to work hard from now on. Working part-time alone just wasn't enough to get by. In the end, I had to quit my part-time job and started working full-time. I felt bad for Johnny, but after he finished elementary school, I had him go to after-school programs on his own. Unexpectedly, I found myself working full-time, and everything became challenging all at once. When I came home from my unfamiliar job, I had to do all the housework by myself. My life had completely changed from before. Time flew by as I was too busy every day. Before I knew it, 7 years had passed since my divorce. But no matter how busy I was, I adapted. Now that Johnny is in middle school, he can mostly take care of himself. I think he's grown into a very responsible boy compared to other boys his age, perhaps because I'm always so busy. He even does the cooking and laundry for me. Thanks to that, I've been free from housework and childcare. And for the past few years, I've had time for myself. Both my personal and working life are going very well. Now I can say it clearly, I'm certainly glad I broke up with that awful man. If I had continued to be married to him, I wouldn't have this life now. But one day, while my son and I were shopping at the local mall, I ran into that terrible guy. It was my ex-husband, George. I didn't notice him, but he started talking to me. "Hey, isn't that you, Lisa? Long time no see. You've really aged." Is that what you say to someone you haven't seen in a while? I snapped. A person with normal sensitivity would never say that to a woman. It was clear he hadn't grown at all as a person. "Huh, you're the one who's aged a lot. I didn't recognize you for a moment." Honestly, George had aged a lot. I hadn't seen him for 7 years, but it felt like he aged twice as much. His hair was thinning and his belly was out, showing a complete middle-aged figure. I thought talking to my ex-husband was a waste of time, so I tried to walk away, saying, "Oh well, long time no see. But I don't really have anything to say to you. See you later." But he wouldn't let me go. He stood in my way and started talking nonsense. Hey, don't be so cold. The family is all together again. Let's catch up for a bit." I didn't want to hear anything about his life. If there was one thing I'd like to complain about, it was that he stopped paying child support a few years after our divorce. Child support is not my right but Johnny's right. The fact that he could talk so openly in front of Johnny, who was owed that money, made me irritated. But George didn't care about my mood at all. He started talking about his recent life, which I didn't want to hear. After our divorce, I remarried. I married the daughter of the manager who was in that picture with me. Oh, he's not a manager anymore. He's an executive now. And I got promoted to manager. I'm definitely winning now. To be honest, I didn't care how much George had been promoted. It had nothing to do with me, and I wasn't envious. All I thought was, why are you bragging about not paying child support even after being promoted? He's such a cheap man to not even pay a few $1,000s a month even though he's winning. And to rub it in even more, George continued his bragging. "Breaking up with you was the right choice. You and your son still look poor. I make $200,000 a year. In the end, George just wanted to brag about himself. He didn't even try to hear about our lives. I thought that any normal parent would be curious about their child's life. But he didn't even talk to Johnny, who was standing right in front of him. He's really a terrible father. Oh, that reminds me, let me introduce you to someone. Hey, George called over a woman who was looking at clothes in the distance. The woman came over, and I knew right away who she was. I had seen her in a picture before. It was George's new wife, Harriet. Meet my wife, Harriet. How about that? She's way more beautiful than you, isn't she? He said. What was he thinking? This woman stole my husband when we were married. I'm glad we're apart now. But back then, it was shocking, and I did resent it. I have no good impression of this woman at all. You'd think my ex-husband would know that, even though he's not the brightest. But he must be really looking down on us, not realizing how insulting this is. Oh, is that all? I don't have time. Bye-bye, I said, feeling extremely unpleasant. I didn't even glance at the woman, let alone greet her. Wait a minute, my ex-husband said, blocking my way again. Stop it. There's no point in hearing about your home life. Jealous because we look happy? You're not just poor in money, don't be bitter in your heart too. You'll only get more miserable. My ex-husband arbitrarily decided that I'm unhappy. Mind your own business. I'm perfectly happy, so leave me alone. The most unfortunate thing lately is being spoken to by you. Even though I said I was happy, my ex-husband didn't believe it at all and continued to worry about my situation. Well, happiness varies from person to person, but being poor isn't happy. Don't push yourself. It's probably impossible for you to remarry with those conditions. I'm worried about you as your ex-husband, you know. As he said this, his face showed an expression completely opposite to concern. He was making a complete fool of me. When I looked at the face of my ex-husband's wife standing next to him, she was also smirking, looking like she was making fun of me. I'll never be friends with this woman. She feels good by looking down on people. She's the worst kind of woman. I told you, you're way better. Have some confidence, George said, either sucking up to his current wife or praising her as the best compared to me. Well, he was promoted thanks to his current wife, so he's probably buttering her up whenever he can. He's really the worst man. You're really the lowest level of woman. I can't believe you were able to marry him. Harriet, my ex-husband's wife, insulted me even though we had just met. That's the worst kind of behavior. I wanted to leave the scene as soon as possible so I wouldn't retort, but my ex-husband stood in front of me, blocking my way. I'll tell you, we're still in love, so the chance of getting back together is zero. Don't get your hopes up for something wrong, he said. He seemed to be having some wild delusion, thinking I was still attached to him even though it's been 7 years since our divorce due to his affair. His head was so full of fantasies that I couldn't say anything. When I was at a loss for words because of my ex-husband's ridiculous delusion, he seemed to think he was right. Hey, too shocked to say anything. Being a popular man is tough. What's popular about a middle-aged man's appearance? I was past anger and starting to feel sick. When I remained silent, my ex-husband tried to say something more, but Johnny interrupted him. Mom, can you fire this guy? Huh? My ex-husband was dumbfounded by Johnny's incomprehensible words. It seemed Johnny was very angry, calling me this guy instead of Dad. Well, it doesn't matter, but what do you mean? I'm not getting fired, am I? You're in middle school now, study properly. He talked down to Johnny too. It's unforgivable that he was making fun of my beloved son as well. I was about to explode with anger at my ex-husband when I heard a voice calling me. Hey, what's going on here? A man came over, calling out. My ex-husband froze when he saw the man's face. Why are you here, boss? He asked the man in front of him. I'm just here shopping with my family. Are you saying I shouldn't be here? No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way, but I was just wondering why you were talking to my ex-wife. Oh, that's natural. She's my current wife after all. What? Her? No, this is your wife, boss. I can't believe it. My ex-husband stammered. Actually, about 3 years ago, I remarried the CEO of my ex-husband's company. The CEO and I became close after my divorce when he approached me while I was shopping at the supermarket. Since I had previously worked at the same company as my ex-husband, I knew the CEO. The CEO knew that my ex-husband had an affair with the head of his department's daughter, leading to our divorce, and that you later married her. It seemed that the CEO was quite bitter about this as a fellow man. But he thought he couldn't meddle in an employee's private life until he saw me at the supermarket and impulsively spoke to me. I was very surprised since I knew the CEO. But I didn't think he would remember my face and name as just an ordinary employee. Perhaps he remembered me easily because I worked at the reception desk of the company. It seems your marriage didn't work out, but I'm sure you'll find someone better soon. CEO, I'm glad you remember me, but you don't have to worry about me. I'm fine. At that time, I had been divorced for less than a year, so I was somewhat putting on a brave face. But the CEO, with his vast life experience, saw right through my act and comforted me with kind words. Divorce takes more than 3 times the effort of marriage. Even if you divorce smoothly, it's tiring. I've never been divorced, but I felt utterly unmotivated when I lost my wife to death. When a man and woman who once loved each other part ways, that's just how it is. So you don't need to put on a brave face. The CEO knew the loneliness of ending a married life. While I was glad to have separated, I was also feeling a whirlpool of emotions like loneliness and emptiness at the time, so his words touched my heart. If talking to someone like me helps, call me anytime. I'll treat you to dinner whenever you like, he said, handing me his business card. I thought it would be too bold to contact him for about 2 years. But as time passed, I calmed down and wanted someone to talk to again. So I finally decided to call the CEO. Despite his busy schedule, the CEO made time for me and treated me to dinner. When I was an employee, the CEO was still a department head, and he had an unapproachable aura since he was the previous CEO's son. But once we had dinner together, I found him easy to talk to, like a nice uncle. Perhaps because I was no longer an employee, the CEO and I quickly became good drinking buddies. Then, about a year passed, and the CEO proposed to me with a serious look. "You're kidding, Steve. Don't joke like that." I thought it was a joke since he mentioned it while we were drinking, but the CEO was serious. "At first, I wanted to encourage you after your divorce, but being with you really calms me down. I haven't felt this way since I lost my wife. Honestly, I feel like I'm the one being healed now. If you're willing, let's spend the rest of our lives together." "Give me a day to think about it," I said and consulted with my son. "I don't mind. You should decide based on whether you like him or not, Mom." Since there was no particular opposition, I decided to marry the CEO. To be honest, I liked him. I thought he was just a drinking buddy, but I also felt truly healed when I was with him. We both felt comforted, so I thought there was no obstacle to living together. When I heard the story about the president's deceased wife, I really understood that he loved her. Every time I heard that story, I thought how happy I would be if I could marry someone who loved me like that. To be honest, I even felt a little jealous of his wife. And so we became a happily married couple. The president really dotes on my son Johnny as if he were his own. Perhaps it's because the president had no children with his previous wife, but they get along so well that they look like a real father and son. I truly am happy now, just as I told my ex-husband. My ex-husband's face turned pale, and he started trembling when he heard that I married the president. He never expected the husband of his poor ex-wife, who he looked down upon, to be the president. "Dad, this man was mocking Mom." "Fire him," Johnny tells the president about my ex-husband without mercy. "Idiot." "No, Johnny, what are you talking about? We were just chatting." My ex-husband tries to smooth things over, but it's clear to the president. "You have a tendency to look down on people in the company. Johnny is probably telling the truth. I've heard some bad rumors about you from your subordinates. I think I'll investigate this, so be prepared." I never thought the president would take Johnny's words seriously and investigate the misdeeds within the company. My ex-husband apologizes to the president. "I'm sorry, I might have been a bit harsh on your wife. Can you please hold off on the internal investigation?" He's begging even in a crowded shopping mall, showing how much he doesn't want the investigation. But this is practically an admission of guilt. The president is not listening. "No, I'm going to proceed. By the way, your close friend, the executive, has a bad reputation too. I'll investigate you both thoroughly." Upon hearing this, my ex-husband's wife also apologizes. "No, it's fine if it's just him, but my dad has nothing to do with it. If you must do it, please do it to him only." Hearing that line, my ex-husband started arguing with his wife on the spot. "What do you mean? You're planning to abandon me? Don't joke around. There are plenty of men like you." Of course, my dad is more important. It's said that one should not interfere in lovers' quarrels, and it's completely shameful. We don't want to be associated with them. So we ignored the arguing ex-couple and left the store. Those selfish people will probably have trouble from now on, but it's their own fault. The president immediately organized a team to thoroughly investigate my ex-husband, and the executives worked the next day. All the things that came out: harassment of subordinates, countless verbal abuses, favoritism, and worst of all, forcing clients to entertain them. It was an astonishing number of incidents happening over many years. Abusing a strong position to demand entertainment is totally inappropriate in this day and age. This attitude of exploiting their position for personal gain is completely out of line. My ex-husband and the executive were demoted and sent to a branch office in Nebraska. They probably knew this would happen, so they apologized again and again in the shopping mall. This means they knew they were doing wrong. Knowing and doing it anyway makes it malicious. They'll probably never get promoted again. According to the president, they both ended up resigning from the company. They were probably afraid of retaliation from the employees they had harassed, and were now ordinary workers. However, it didn't end with just quitting. They were sued by the employees they had harassed. Since they were disliked by almost all the employees, there was a lot of evidence, and they completely lost in court. They were charged with enormous compensation and ended up in debt. The ex-husband's wife, whose family became poor, seems to have blamed her husband, and their marriage turned sour. They ended up divorcing soon after. Every day they argued, and the ex-husband took it out on his wife. So she might even sue him for damages, and the situation could become a legal quagmire. Seeing the downfall of my ex-husband makes me realize that it's best to live honestly and sincerely in this world. I was able to conceive a child with the president. I'm 42, so it's a late childbirth, but a healthy baby was born, so I'm relieved. Johnny seems very happy to become a big brother and takes good care of the baby, even feeding the baby milk every day. Steve is talking ahead of time, hoping that Johnny will grow up and help build the company. We're both getting older, so raising a child will be hard, but the fear flies away when I look at the baby's sleeping face. Thank you for being born. Mom's gonna work hard, I think, as I face the day.
Dad put his arm around Tracy's shoulder and happily introduced the person standing there. "This is Dad's new wife, Lisa. Nice to meet you," he said. "I wasn't expecting this, but I already have one mom. I can't accept someone else as my mom," I replied firmly. Dad smirked. "So you're saying you'll leave because of Lisa? If you want to live with your new mom, then fine. I'll go pack my things," I said bluntly, surprising both Dad and Tracy. I started packing in my room. "Thank you for everything. From now on, we're strangers. I won't know what happens to you," I told them. A month later, Dad called desperately for Lisa's help. It made me wonder, do I still have a dad? I'm Lisa, a 15-year-old in middle school. I used to think I was the happiest kid, loved and cherished by my parents. But things changed when I was in 6th grade. "Are you Lisa?" a flashy woman asked me one day after school. I froze. Ever since I started school, I'd learned 5 important phrases: don't go, don't ride, shout, run away, and tell someone. They were for staying safe. "I'm a friend of your dad," the woman said with a big smile, her blonde hair styled up and wearing large sunglasses and bold clothes. But I knew better. Adults who say they're okay often aren't. I've seen it in dramas where kidnappers pretend to be friendly to lure children. "I know who you are, Tracy," I said, trying to stay calm. Tracy rummaged through her flashy bag and pulled out a heavily decorated smartphone with long, adorned nails. She showed me a photo on the screen. Me with my parents at a church during my first communion. It was the same picture I used as wallpaper on my phone. I was shocked. "How do you have this?" "It's not strange at all. Your dad gave it to me," she laughed, putting the phone away. "My name is Tracy. Can you tell Mom to give me Dad quickly?" she said abruptly, then left. In 6th grade, I vaguely understood what she meant, but I didn't know what to do. When I got home, I couldn't say anything to my mom, who welcomed me back. From then on, I lived as usual on the outside, but inside I carried a heavy burden. Dad was the same, kind, family-oriented, and aspiring to be an actor. but there was always that heavy feeling in my heart. I graduated from elementary school and became a middle school student. My parents acted like everything was normal, attending admissions guidance and taking photos with me in front of the school gate. To anyone looking, we were just a normal, happy family. I was lost in my thoughts when Dad's voice snapped me back to reality. He thanked the person who took our photo and showed us the screen. I wondered if Dad would also give this photo to Tracy. "What's wrong?" Mom asked, noticing my worried expression. I glanced at Mom, then at Dad, determined not to let her know. Even if Dad had a relationship with Tracy, I couldn't bear for Mom to find out. I decided to act like nothing was wrong. Maybe Tracy was just interested in Dad and said those things out of jealousy. She might have shown me the photo as a joke or to upset me. I clung to that hope, choosing to stay silent. Time passed, and shortly after I started middle school, Mom fell seriously ill. It was a disease that would take her life. "That's not true, right, Mom?" I asked her, hoping it was a lie. Mom sadly confirmed it wasn't a lie. She wouldn't be able to be with me for much longer. Mom shared something important with me with a smile. "Lisa, there's something I want to tell you. After I'm gone, I think you'll have a hard time. I'll do everything I can to make sure you can live on your own." She meant living independently, not with Dad. I understood what Mom was hinting at, but I couldn't bring myself to ask directly. It seemed like Mom thought I knew, but chose not to discuss it. "When that time comes, there might be things you don't like, but I want you to believe that I did it for you," Mom said. "I understand," was all I could say. Mom hugged me tightly, happy with my response. After that, we didn't talk about it again. We carried on as a family of 3, pretending everything was normal. The only change was Mom's declining health. She grew weaker, going in and out of the hospital until she couldn't come back. Dad was always there for her, playing the perfect husband. He cooked, took care of the house, and visited Mom in the hospital diligently. But his words and actions felt forced to me. I made soup. "How does it taste?" Dad would ask. "It's delicious, Dad. You're a great cook," I replied, playing along. "Get well soon and cook for us again," Dad said, acting like everything was fine. We played our roles, pretending to be a happy family, while Mom and I knew it was all an act. We spent Mom's last days peacefully, trying to make the most of our time together. About 2 years later, when I was in the 3rd year of middle school, Mom passed away. Losing a parent is incredibly painful, something only those who have gone through it can truly understand. At the wake and funeral, Dad played the part of a grieving husband perfectly, shedding tears alongside me. After the funeral, I found myself alone. People told me to stay strong with Dad, but I had made a promise to Mom to strive on my own from now on. Dad became distant, hardly coming home. "Dad is busy with work. Lisa is big enough to be okay on her own," he would say before leaving me alone for long stretches of time. I had expected some consideration from him after Mom's passing, but it never came. I wanted someone to be there for me, but I had to accept the loneliness. At 15, you're both an adult and a child, and I was learning to cope with the loneliness. Then, a month after Mom's memorial service, something happened. It was a Saturday, and I was home alone since it was a school holiday. I heard noise outside, Dad directing people loudly. "First, get rid of all the unnecessary stuff. Clean up before moving these items," he instructed. Confused, I asked, "What's going on? What are you doing with Mom's stuff?" To my surprise, people started taking out Mom's belongings from the house. "No, don't take that away," I protested, standing in the doorway. The movers seemed troubled but continued their work. I knew they were just doing their job, but I couldn't understand why Dad had asked them to remove Mom's things. "Why are you taking Mom's stuff away? Mom's not here anymore, but no one else will use those things," I pleaded. "I'm having them taken away because no one will use those tools," Dad replied. I blocked the entrance, determined to stop them from taking anything away. "No, what are you planning to do by taking them away?" I asked Dad as he supervised the movers. We'll sell what we can and dispose of the rest, Dad replied, seeming to enjoy the situation. Don't take them away. Those are Mom's bridal trousseau. I protested. My mom's parents were wealthy, so the items they prepared for her wedding were valuable. The movers looked troubled by my words. This trousseau was made by my grandma when Mom was young, for her marriage. They're very important. Someone behind me explained. Wow, that's amazing stuff. It was Tracy. She pushed past me to examine Mom's things. I don't know much about it, but is this what they call antique? I'll use it. Put it back! Please put it back, I pleaded. But the movers didn't stop until Tracy intervened. Put it back, she said firmly. Dad then put his arm around Tracy's shoulder and happily introduced her. This person is Dad's new wife, meaning your new mom, Lisa? Nice to meet you. I was shocked. I only have one mom. I won't accept such a person, I said firmly. Dad smirked. Then it means you'll be leaving, Lisa. You're still a child. If you don't listen to Dad, you can't live on your own, Dad continued with a smirk. This is mine and Mom's house. Kick that woman out. Tracy pretended to cry, apologizing to Mom. Then we can live here together. Don't let that woman into the house, she said to me. I firmly refused to live with Dad and Tracy together. Tracy leaned on Dad, looking pleased. Well, if you hate it that much, Lisa will have to leave, Dad said, astonishing me. Live with your new mom. If you hate it, leave, I replied casually. Dad and Tracy looked surprised by my response. Then I'll get ready to leave. You two do as you please, I said, ignoring their stunned expressions, and went back to my room to pack. There wasn't much left in my room since most of my belongings had already been moved elsewhere. Dad never came into my room, so he probably didn't notice. I quickly gathered my school supplies and essentials. Thank you for everything. From now on, we are strangers. I won't know anything about what happens to you, I said to Dad and Tracy, then walked out of the house. A taxi I had called arrived, and I got in, telling the driver my destination. Goodbye, Dad, I murmured quietly. I arrived at my grandparents' large house in the suburbs. They welcomed me with tears. Lisa, you did well, my grandparents said, relieved. We were completely deceived all this time, playing the roles of the good husband and father. They added regretfully, but I was okay. I already knew. Mom knew about Dad's affair, maybe even that Tracy had approached me. She never talked to me about it. I wondered if she would have continued pretending to be happily married with Dad if she hadn't gotten sick. Mom must have made her decisions thinking about what would happen to me after she was gone. She said she would do everything she could to prepare me, including teaching me household chores. I had been helping Mom from a young age, and we cooked together since I was in elementary school. I learned her recipes and could make most of her dishes. In the last year before she passed away, Mom taught me as much as she could, so even when Dad wasn't home and I was living alone, I could manage household tasks like laundry and cleaning. It was all thanks to what Mom had taught me. A month after I left Dad's house, he started calling incessantly. I expected it, but I ignored the calls. I didn't answer my phone throughout the day. When I finally checked it at night, there were over 300 missed calls. The phone kept ringing silently in front of me, lighting up to alert me. Maybe it's about time, I thought, and answered quietly. Hello? I said. Lisa, why didn't you answer sooner? Do you have any idea how many times I've called? Dad yelled immediately. I stayed silent. Hello, Lisa. Why aren't you responding? He continued. I remained quiet. It's Dad. You haven't forgotten my voice, have you? He asked. I wish I could forget, but unfortunately, I remember, I thought. Lisa, help me. I don't have anyone. After I hung up, Dad was silent for a moment before he continued. It's me, Dad. I'm really in trouble. Can't you help? Lisa isn't the kind of daughter who would abandon her parents, right? His pleading voice was sickening. As I said earlier, I don't have a father, Dad, I replied firmly. Lisa, do you have the wrong number? Please check, I added before turning off my phone. This way, I wouldn't have to hear from him again. I plan to cancel the phone soon. The next day, Dad and Tracy showed up at my grandparents' house. Let me see, Lisa. You must have influenced her. Send her back right now, Dad demanded. That's right. A young and beautiful mom came to pick you up. So hurry back home, Lisa. I'll forgive you now. Give back that house, Tracy chimed in. But they were kicked out because they came to my grandparents' house. Before Mom passed away, she transferred ownership of various properties, including the house, to me. The house was a gift from my grandparents when my mom got married. Knowing about her illness, Mom acted quickly and transferred ownership to me. She even paid the inheritance tax properly. However, she didn't inform Dad, so Dad must have thought he had rights over the house, believing Mom's estate belonged to him. That's why he panicked. I asked a lawyer, who was my guardian, to send a notice of eviction to Dad once I learned the facts. The notice stated he had to vacate within a month or I would sue. It was clearly written. At the same time, I had the lawyer write that all the furniture in the house belonged to me, and if anything was damaged, I would claim compensation. Before leaving, I had taken photos of all the household items. I remembered the movers handling things quite roughly, and I worried that Tracy may have caused some damage. The high-quality, one-of-a-kind furniture made by artisans would be costly to repair. I hoped there was no damage. About 10 days after my notice was delivered, I received a counter notice from Dad. It contained a will from Mom stating that all her estate was to be left to Dad. It seemed to be something Mom wrote earlier. The notice demanded that, according to the will, my grandparents should immediately transfer all of Mom's estate to Dad. It accused my grandparents of deceiving their precious granddaughter and destroying the father-daughter relationship, demanding my immediate return. In response, we sent another notice explaining that the will was invalid because there was a newer will. Wills are prioritized by the date they were made, and the one Dad had was dated shortly after Mom was diagnosed. In contrast, another one was dated the day before she passed away. Mom had prepared the will in advance and filled in the date when the time came, handing it over to the lawyer. There could be no newer will than this. In Mom's trembling handwriting, I could feel her determination not to leave anything to Dad. Her will stated that all her estate was to be left to me, and I would be adopted by my grandfather, ensuring Dad would not have custody. All procedures were entrusted to my lawyer, who is my guardian. Although most of Mom's estate was already in my name, she expressed her intent not to leave even a penny to Dad. A few days after sending the second notice, a lawyer hired by Dad contacted us. Dad wanted to see me. Your father believes Lisa is under some misunderstanding. He doesn't understand why you suddenly left and this treatment. What happened? The lawyer inquired. Dad had hidden Tracy's existence from the lawyer, claiming I silently left for my grandparents' house and became unreachable. He also claimed that they called the police when he visited my grandparents' house, and they wouldn't let him see me. He feared I might be held captive by them. Worried sick about me, my daughter is still a minor, he appealed. He said he couldn't believe I would agree to be adopted by my grandpa without his consent as my biological father. My grandparents had deceived me, and I believed their lies. Dad insisted tearfully. She's my only precious daughter left by my wife. Please, I beg you, help me get my daughter back. The lawyer said it was difficult to watch Dad speak so emotionally about me. Your father believes that you must be confused after losing your mother. He, too, lost the love of his life and couldn't be there for you. He thinks that might be why things have been this way since Mom was alive. But why is he so theatrical? Maybe it's because he once aspired to be an actor, I thought to myself. I remembered something on her deathbed. Mom asked Dad to take care of me, and he agreed, holding her hand. Even my skeptical grandparents were moved to tears by this scene, like something out of a drama. I watched coldly as Dad held Mom's hand. I felt no warmth of affection there. He continues to act until the end, doesn't he? I remarked. Then I played a recording for the lawyer. It was from the day the movers came to the house and when they came to my grandparents' house. The recording revealed Dad's true nature. The lawyer's expression changed upon hearing it. Dad had been pretending to care about Mom and me all along, but after Mom passed away, and when it came time to bring Tracy into the house, his true colors finally showed. I finally had the evidence in my hands. Well, this seems to be a different story. My apologies, the lawyer said politely and left. Later, he informed me that he had declined Dad's request and was suing him for breach of contract for lying about the circumstances. After all of this, no one will be willing to represent your father. Indeed, if he told the truth, no one would take his side. But why did Dad continue this act? And why did Mom accept it? There was a reason. Dad was Mom's first love. When she was a middle school student, the same age as I am now, she went to see a play and became a fan of Dad. At the time, Dad belonged to a small theater group and was aspiring to be an actor. Mom started supporting him, and they began dating. My grandparents were against the relationship because Dad was 8 years older and an unsuccessful actor. But shortly after Mom graduated from college and became pregnant with me, they reluctantly allowed the marriage under the condition that they take Mom's surname. Mom was the only daughter of a big company's president. Dad quit acting after getting married and joined a subsidiary of my grandpa's company. Since then, my grandpa had always been watching Dad. We never really trusted him, always feeling that something was off about him. But seeing him at the hospital, I thought he truly loved Mom and me. Dad may not have succeeded as an actor, but he was very good at deceiving us. I, too, would have continued to believe he was a wonderful dad if I hadn't met Tracy. He's really good at acting. But then, how did Mom realize? As I wondered, my grandma showed me a letter from Mom. It was a letter entrusted to the lawyer to be given to my grandparents after her death. Mom had grown suspicious of Dad after they got married. Despite previously adoring him, she started to feel his behavior was fake after she was conceived. Perhaps it was Mom's intuition. When she started investigating because of her suspicions, she discovered Dad had several women. He had many fans who supported him financially because of his good looks. Even so, Mom tried to believe that she was chosen among many, but she eventually learned what people around her were saying. I bagged the president's daughter. I'm going to be the president myself eventually. I don't love her, but she's wealthy, so I'll take care of her. Dad had always seen Mom as a cash cow. Even when she was just a fan, she was shocked to discover this. But she hoped that once the baby was born, they could be happy as a family. After I was born, Dad became a perfect father on the surface, and everyone was deceived. But Mom continued to struggle with wanting to believe in him and not being able to. She kept investigating him regularly. Then Tracy came into the picture. Tracy was a worker at a nightclub Dad frequented. She believed Dad was the heir to a large company and became his mistress, thinking she could replace Mom if Mom stepped aside. But in reality, Dad was just Mom's husband, not my grandpa's son. Tracy didn't know that and came to me with such intentions. Dad and Tracy eventually gave up and left the house. Even if the affair came to light, Mom, who could have filed for divorce, was no longer there. They had nothing more to lose or pay, and they seemed resigned to their fate. But I could sue them. I made sure they knew that. The day Tracy met me, a little girl, she had tried to pressure Mom into leaving by revealing her presence, an act that could be described as maliciously obstructing custody. Simply put, it's possible to claim damages against a mistress who tries to take a parent away from a small child. Tracy denied doing such a thing, but a detective I had hired happened to capture the incident on video. Tracy begged for forgiveness, asking me not to sue, but I was relentless. As a result of the lawsuit, Tracy's actions became widely known, and she could no longer work at the club where she had caused various problems. The club, a high-end establishment, values its reputation above all, and they couldn't afford to employ someone like Tracy. The club asked Tracy to resign, and Tracy threatened to sue me for defamation. I told her to go ahead with suing me. It wouldn't bother me at all. In fact, it would probably be more troublesome for Tracy. In the end, she didn't sue and left the club. It's unlikely she'll be able to work in such high-end places anymore. My lawsuit is still ongoing. Even if I win, I won't get much money, but that's not the point. I will not let them escape. I intend to fight to the end. Dad could no longer stay at his company. Originally, he got in through my grandpa's connections, and being the son-in-law, he was expected to eventually take over. So no one could say anything against him, no matter what he did. However, this incident, being kicked out of the house by his own daughter, and the revelation of his long-standing affair with Tracy made everyone aware. It turns out he wasn't very competent at his job to begin with. Well, he could always put on a competent face. Acting was the only thing he was good at, making him seem like a sharp individual. But frankly, he was incompetent. Everyone came to realize this once again. Really, with all that acting talent, and yet not making it as an actor, the entertainment industry must really not just be about talent. Maybe those who are called stars have something Dad lacked, an aura perhaps. Anyway, with Dad's true nature exposed, all the pent-up grievances of those around him erupted. He became a pariah everywhere he went, not just among his colleagues, but also among clients who looked at him with disdain. Because he had a decent appearance, even the female employees who were once favorable towards him now looked at him with contempt. He stayed at the company for a while, trying to make himself small, but eventually the situation became too unbearable and he quit. Now he's supposedly living in a small apartment with Tracy. He's called a few times asking for help. But we are strangers now, and not just any stranger. I have no obligation to help someone I detest. As expected, Tracy did damage my mom's bridal attire. So when I demanded compensation, they paid up, probably thinking they couldn't afford another lawsuit. They might have used Dad's severance pay or savings, or they might even be in debt. But that's none of my concern. I made it clear before. From now on, it's up to the two of you. I have officially become my grandpa's adopted child, though it doesn't change my name or much else, just the legal relationship. From high school, I'll be studying abroad, preparing to take over my grandpa's legacy. Losing Mom was very sad and lonely. I still cry when I think of her, but I can't cry forever. Mom must have anticipated such a day would come, ensuring I wouldn't struggle with languages by making me learn several. She really raised me to survive on my own, no matter where I go. I feel this deeply. I'm just starting to walk towards a bright future for myself to meet Mom's expectations. I want to absorb various things abroad, and I'll definitely meet someone who loves me sincerely. In this respect, Mom was a cautionary tale. Saying this, it felt as if the mom in the photo smiled a little sheepishly.
Hi, my name is Valerie and I'm 29 years old. I've wanted to talk about this for a long time, but due to legal issues, I couldn't until now. Now that I can, I want to share my story as a warning to my mother-in-law. I don't want her to come near us again. Adrian and I met because of our mothers. His mother, Felicia, and my mother, Veronica, were old friends. One day, they met for coffee after many years and realized they both had single children. They decided to set us up, and a week later, Adrian and I found ourselves at the same coffee shop. Though it was a bit awkward that our mothers set us up, we quickly warmed up to each other. We found out we had a lot in common, like our love for action movies and pizza. We were so engrossed in our conversation that we didn't notice the time passing. As the sun began to set, we said goodbye but promised to meet again soon. The next week, we met for a newly released action movie and pizza. We continued to go on dates almost every week for the next 2 months. I found myself falling deeply in love with Adrian. He also fell in love with me, which I could tell because his face would light up every time he saw me. He paid close attention to everything I said, and if I mentioned something I wanted, he would often surprise me with it on our next date. I loved his sense of humor, how attentive he was, and how much he cared for me. Because of this, I was the one to make the first move and ask him to be my boyfriend. He enthusiastically said yes. We officially introduced each other as a couple to our parents. Both our mothers were overjoyed and proud that they had brought us together. However, over time, I noticed a change in Felicia's behavior toward me. She became cold and distant, sometimes making snide remarks under her breath. When I asked her why she was behaving that way or why she said something rude, she always told me it was nothing or tried to convince me I was imagining things. This bothered me a lot, and one day I spoke to Adrian about it. He got angry and promised to make sure his mother treated me properly. I was grateful for that. I knew how much Adrian loved his mother, but the fact that he would stand up for me against her made me incredibly happy. I don't know what Adrian said to his mother, but after that, Felicia treated me like she used to before her behavior changed. I was grateful and enjoyed the stress-free time. Adrian and I dated for 2 years before deciding to get married. Our wedding was a small and intimate ceremony with only our closest friends and family present. Shortly after we got married, tragedy struck. Adrian's mother, Felicia, had her house burned down due to faulty electrical wiring. Thankfully, she was safe. Felicia was alright and unharmed as she had been out when the house caught fire. Since she had no place to stay, we opened our home to her. She lived with us for the next year. During that year, Adrian and I experienced great success in our careers. We were in a good place to start a family and decided to try. Within 2 months, I got pregnant. Adrian and I were overjoyed. We had always talked about being parents, and the fact that our dream was coming true made us feel really good. However, our joy slowly started to fade as Felicia gradually became more controlling. I suffered from a lot of morning sickness and cramping. My legs got swollen, making it hard to do household chores because all my energy was spent at work. Felicia couldn't stand this. She would yell at me to do her work. One day, I came home early from work because I was in too much pain. I lay down on the bed and took a short nap. But I was rudely awakened a little while later by Felicia. She began yelling at me for not having done her laundry. Disoriented from being woken up, I asked Felicia what she was talking about. Valerie, why didn't you do the laundry today? Now I have nothing to wear. Wait, what? Why didn't you do your own laundry? It's not my responsibility. It's your responsibility as the host to take care of that. I'm literally in so much pain right now. Are you trying to start a fight about this? Oh, come on. You're just making a big deal out of it. Pregnancy isn't that bad. You're exaggerating for attention. You have no idea what I'm going through. It's not easy for me to manage work and house chores when I'm feeling so unwell. That's not my problem. I was pregnant once too, and I never experienced all this. Get out. Get out. Get out of the room. Get out of the house. Get out of my life. How dare you talk to me like I'm faking everything? Who are you? Can you feel what I'm feeling? Get out. Felicia looked scared and quickly left the room. I couldn't believe her audacity. How dare she try to tell me my pain wasn't real? What would I gain from faking my pain? At the same time, I was yelling at Felicia. Adrian had come home from work. He worriedly ran upstairs to check on me and saw his mother hurry out of the room in fear. He walked into our room carefully and saw me crying hysterically on the bed. He quickly sat down next to me and hugged me, letting me cry for a while before asking why I was crying. I recounted everything that had happened with Felicia and how she had been constantly yelling at me whenever I didn't do the house chores. Adrian got really angry and stood up to talk to his mother, but I stopped him. He saw my pleading face and calmed down. Why didn't you tell me earlier? I knew how upset you'd get. I didn't want you to end up evicting your mother, causing more tension between you two. I felt sorry for her, so I kept it to myself. Babe, I understand why you did that, but I should have known what was going on. I want you to share everything with me, especially when it's affecting you like this. I'm sorry, darling. I should have told you, but I didn't want to cause more problems. You never have to bear these things alone. We're a team, remember? I promise you I'll talk to my mother calmly about her behavior, and I want you to be there with me for that conversation. Together, we walked into Felicia's room. I was nervous about what Adrian was going to do. I know that he gets very protective of me, and his temper isn't the best. While I was hurt, I hoped he wouldn't do something he regretted. Felicia looked surprised and asked why we were in her room. Why are you both in my room? What's going on? Enough with the act. Valerie told me everything. You've been constantly yelling at her about the household chores. Well, she should be doing them. After all, I'm just a guest here, right? You could have either done them yourself or waited for me to do them. You didn't need to bother Valerie like that. It's a woman's job to handle household chores. You would never catch me asking you for help with these kinds of tasks. I don't care about your beliefs. It's my house, my rules. I'm your mother. You can't tell me what to do. This is my home, and if you can't respect that, then maybe it's time you find another place to live. You can't do that. I have nowhere else to go. The only reason I haven't evicted you already is because Valerie asked me not to, but if you cross the line again, I won't hesitate. I promise I won't do it again. Just please don't kick me out. You need to change, Mom. Treat Valerie with respect like the family she is to us. All right. The rest of my pregnancy went relatively smoothly. My symptoms eased as I progressed further along. Finally, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Adrian and I were overjoyed to welcome our precious daughter into our family. We named her Ava. I stayed in the hospital for 2 more days after giving birth. On the 3rd day, Adrian picked us up from the hospital before he left for work and dropped us home. Felicia warmly greeted the 3 of us. Oh, look at my precious granddaughter. You've done such a wonderful job, Valerie. She's the most beautiful bundle of joy. Thank you, Felicia. It means a lot coming from you. Valerie needs some rest now, Mom. She just gave birth, and Ava kept her up through the night. Don't worry, I'll take care of the baby. You go and get some rest, Valerie. I don't want to be away from Ava so soon. Trust me, you'll need this rest soon enough. Mom will take good care of her. You rest, dear. I'll be here to look after Ava. All right, but just for a couple of hours. Then I'll take over. That sounds fair. You rest now, and I'll do the same later. Thank you, Mom. With that, Adrian left for work. I went to sleep, and Felicia looked after Ava. I woke up 2 hours later to Ava crying loudly. I got worried and went to check on what was going on. The sound of Ava crying was coming from Felicia's room. I didn't know what was happening, whether Felicia was purposely ignoring my daughter or if she was somehow sleeping through the loud noise. I knocked on Felicia's door but got no response. I tried to open the door, but it was locked. Panic started to set in. I began banging on the door and yelling for Felicia to open it. After 2 minutes, she finally opened the door just enough for me to see a portion of her face. Felicia, what are you doing? Let me see Ava. I'm just trying to teach you a lesson. You can't rely on Adrian for everything. You need to take responsibility for your duties around the house. This is not the way to teach a lesson. Give me my child right now. Complete your chores, and then you can have Ava back. It's time you learn to handle your responsibilities. What is wrong with you? Remember, the longer you take to complete the chores, the longer your child goes hungry. Fear replaced the anger in me. I was ready to do anything that Felicia asked as long as Ava was safe. I couldn't understand why she was being so cruel to me right after I had given birth, but I didn't have the luxury of arguing about it. I needed my baby fed and safe. I asked Felicia what needed to be done. Felicia told me there was a pile of dishes to be washed, the house needed to be vacuumed because it had gotten dusty, and the common bathroom had to be scrubbed clean. She also said I had to finish everything before Adrian came back and then I couldn't tell him anything about it. Otherwise, she would make things worse for me. I nodded through my sobs and left to complete the chores. I sobbed because I was still in pain, but I knew I had no choice. I spent the next couple of hours toiling away to make the house clean for Felicia. I had to take a few painkillers to stop me from fainting from pain and exhaustion. I also had to be careful not to strain my stitches and tear them. All in all, I was having a tough time and kept crying as I did the chores. I wanted to tell Adrian because this was beyond cruel, but I was scared about what Felicia might do to Ava. I was glad that Felicia had managed to get Ava to stop crying, but I was still scared about what the future held for us. I just wished there was some way out of this. The universe heard my wish and did more than I had hoped for. That day, Adrian arrived home 2 hours early to surprise Ava and me. When he walked into the house, he couldn't find me anywhere. He saw the light in the common bathroom switched on and walked in to see me on my hands and knees, scrubbing the floor while sobbing. Adrian rushed over to me and asked why I was overexerting myself like this. At the sight of him, I started sobbing harder. Adrian panicked and pulled me into his arms, gently stroking my hair as he waited for me to calm down. When I did, I told him about what Felicia had done. Adrian was seething, and unlike last time, I didn't stop him. Adrian banged on Felicia's door and demanded she open up. Felicia opened the door and looked at him in surprise. Adrian, how come you came home early? Did you forget something? I didn't forget anything. I came home early because I wanted to surprise Ava and see my family, but instead, I found you trying to teach my wife a lesson in the worst possible way. Oh, come on. I was just trying to help her be a better wife and mother. She needs to learn to handle her responsibilities. Help? That was no help. It was cruel and heartless. How could you treat her like that? She needs to learn. It's for her own good. For her own good. Look at our child. You had no right to involve her in your twisted lessons. She's just a baby. I know what's best for everyone, including you. Valerie needs to change. No, you need to change. I won't let you hurt my family anymore. We're done. I want you out of our lives. Adrian, you can't be serious. I thought you cared about me. I did care about you once, but not anymore. You've crossed the line, and I won't tolerate it. I will make you pay. Adrian, please. I didn't mean for this to happen. It's too late for apologies. You need to face the consequences of your actions. He silently walked out of her room and handed Ava to me. I cried tears of joy. I knew you had to be some kind of monster to torment an innocent child like that. Anger swirled within me, and I wanted to make Felicia pay. I asked Adrian what he had done to Felicia. I'm going to file a lawsuit against her. She endangered our child and harassed you. I will make sure she pays dearly for it, Adrian declared. But Adrian, fighting a lawsuit, isn't it too much? You and Ava are my world. Nothing is too much if anyone hurts either of you. She had no right to treat you like that. Thank you for standing up for us. I can't believe she would go to such lengths to get her way. I don't know what I would have done without you here. It was terrifying. From now on, you and Ava will be safe. I won't allow anyone to harm you ever again. True to his word, Adrian filed the lawsuit. A couple of days later, Felicia was served with court summons. Felicia was shocked and asked Adrian what the summons was for. You endangered my child and harassed my wife after she gave birth. I had to file this lawsuit to hold you accountable for your actions, Adrian said firmly. Adrian, please. I didn't mean to cause harm. I was just trying to help. Your idea of help is twisted. You crossed the line, and now you have to face the consequences. We're family. You can't do this to me. Family doesn't give people the right to hurt others. You hurt Valerie and traumatized Ava. I won't stand for it. Please, I'll change. I promise I won't interfere anymore. It's too late for promises. You have no evidence against me. How will you prove it? I installed baby cameras everywhere the night before Valerie got home from the hospital. I've got more than enough evidence of you hurting my family. Adrian, I beg you don't do this. I'll do anything to make it right. You had your chance to be better. Now you must face the truth. You broke my trust, and I won't let you hurt my family any longer. In the months that followed, things moved quickly in court. Felicia was charged with a misdemeanor and sentenced to 6 months in jail plus an $800 fine. When the judge announced the sentence, Felicia broke down and started wailing in the courtroom. Adrian didn't seem to care about her tears and instead looked satisfied that she got what she deserved. As I watched Felicia get escorted out of the courtroom in handcuffs, I couldn't help but feel relieved. I knew that for at least the next 6 months, my family and I would be free of Felicia's toxic behavior. Meanwhile, Adrian and I focused on raising our newborn daughter Ava and didn't let Felicia's actions define us. We found strength in each other and the support of our friends and loved ones. While Felicia was in jail, she had time to think about what she had done. At the same time, Adrian and I worked on healing from the hurt she caused. I couldn't fully forgive her, but I knew it was important to move forward for our own sake and our families. Felicia finished her jail time and sought counseling to make amends for her actions. I wanted to believe she could change, but I remained cautious and never let her come close to us again. One time she tried, and I threatened to get a restraining order. Our lives gradually got back to normal. The pain Felicia caused was still there, but we focused on building a better future for our family and cherishing the happiness Ava brought into our lives.
My brother-in-law, Kevin, surprised us by saying, "Truth is, I sold our house." My husband and I were so shocked that we couldn't speak. But the most surprised person was my mother-in-law. She asked why we did that and why we hadn't come to pick her up. My mother-in-law was really upset and started arguing with Kevin to calm down. Kevin tried to explain why he sold the house. My name is Sandra, and I work from home with my husband, Robert. We loved working from home because we could take breaks whenever we needed. Then, my mother-in-law came to live with us. We were doing fine financially, but she kept asking us why we weren't going out to work. Every time she questioned us, I felt exhausted and frustrated. We tried to explain that we were working from home, but she didn't understand. She thought we were just fooling around and not thinking about our future. My mother-in-law was worried and often said she should have gone to live with Kevin instead. Kevin is Robert's brother, and he married a wealthy woman named Carol. But we knew Kevin wouldn't come to pick her up because he was too busy enjoying his rich wife's money. So, my mother-in-law kept waiting for Kevin to come and take her to his big house, hoping it would eventually become her house. But we knew it was unlikely to happen because Robert had already made it clear that she could live with him. However, Kevin refused to let his mother live with him. So we ended up living together. Even though we were called unemployed for doing remote work, we accepted it because that's just how my mother-in-law is. But then, out of nowhere, we got a call from Kevin. "I'll be coming over this weekend," he said, and then hung up before we could respond. Robert and I were confused about what to do. My mother-in-law overheard and got excited, thinking Kevin was coming to pick her up. "He's coming to pick me up. Please help me pack," she said, dragging Robert to her room. But Robert tried to explain that Kevin probably didn't mean that, but she didn't believe him. "He didn't say anything about picking you up, did he?" Robert asked. "He didn't say it, but he must be coming for me," she insisted. We couldn't understand why she was so sure. Since she came to our house, she did whatever she wanted, didn't do any housework, and relied on the money we gave her. We didn't want to force her to stay, so we packed her bags and waited for Kevin to come. When Kevin and his wife arrived over the weekend, they seemed suspiciously nice. My mother-in-law greeted them happily, complaining about us not treating her well. "You guys don't mistreat Mom," Kevin said, defending her. "We're not mistreating her. We give her money and let her eat whatever she likes," Robert explained. "Sandra is handling the house chores," Robert said, looking uneasy, but Kevin seemed suspicious. Robert has always been a bit clueless, probably treating Mom badly without even realizing it. "And it seems Sandra isn't the considerate type," Kevin said, agreeing with my mother-in-law. Hearing this conversation, Robert and I couldn't help but frown. Despite this, we decided to entertain our guests and led them to the living room. We all sat around the table, with Robert and me on one side and the couple on the other. "What are you sitting around for? Serve the tea," my mother-in-law demanded. "I thought you were going to make the tea, mother-in-law," I replied. Making an old woman work. "You see, Kevin, Sandra is this kind of person," she said, even fake crying. I was too stunned by her behavior to argue back. After I served the tea, Kevin and his wife became serious. "The truth is, we sold our house," Kevin said. Robert and I were shocked, and my mother-in-law was the most surprised. "Why would you do something like that? Didn't you come to pick me up?" she asked, flustered. Kevin tried to calm her down, explaining that they were in debt and needed a place to stay temporarily. "What debt?" my mother-in-law asked. "I was trying to start a business, but it didn't go well," Kevin explained, laughing nervously. Robert and I sighed, feeling exasperated. "We only need to stay until we find a new house. Please, we have nowhere else to turn," Kevin pleaded. Feeling a bit conflicted, we agreed to let them stay temporarily, but made them promise to leave within a month. "Got it," Kevin said, still laughing nervously as they went back to prepare to move their things. After Kevin and his wife left, my mother-in-law sat silently, looking thoughtful. We assumed she was still in shock. The next day, their belongings arrived promptly. "We have so much stuff. Where should we put it all? We might have to sell some or rent a locker," we discussed, while moving Kevin's things. Suddenly, my mother-in-law dropped a bombshell. "I've been thinking. Wouldn't we be more secure in the future if Kevin's here? So you freeloaders can leave, can't you?" she said abruptly. My husband and I were taken aback by her sudden demand. "If you insist, I can tolerate Robert staying. But I don't need a wife who can't do anything. Get a divorce, then the space that Sandra was occupying can be used for all these packages," she eagerly suggested, looking at my husband for agreement. "What are you talking about?" he reacted, astounded as usual. Then my brother-in-law and his wife arrived. My mother-in-law greeted them joyfully, but I was still shaken by her earlier words. Despite this, my husband decided to ignore them for the moment and asked his brother to deal with the packages. "There are more than I thought. Try to reduce the number, rent a locker, or sell some if you have to," my husband suggested. But his brother didn't like the idea. These are important packages. How could I sell them? What if someone steals them from a locker or they get damaged? Are you going to take responsibility, bro? He retorted. My husband shook his head, disappointed by his brother's selfishness. This is our house, you know. It's only natural that you should endure some inconvenience. If you don't like it, find a place to live quickly and leave, my husband asserted. At that moment, my mother-in-law interrupted, shouting, "What are you talking about? Didn't I just say if you two are not happy with Kevin and the rest, you can leave? You're basically freeloaders. You're not needed in this house. Kevin is trying to start a business, and all you two do is loaf around the house doing so-called remote work. You're a nuisance." My husband and I looked at each other in disbelief, while my brother-in-law and his wife were surprised by my mother-in-law's words. But then they started to smirk. "That might not be a bad idea," Kevin said. "Mom, that's a good idea. Yeah, it's a hassle to look for a place, so we could live here. So sell this house to us, right, Carol? I feel uncomfortable with you two around, so it would be helpful if you sold this place to us. Plus, it seems like our mother-in-law is on our side, so sell this place to us," Carol chimed in. My husband and I were dumbfounded at their words. "What nonsense are you?" my husband began, but was interrupted by my mother-in-law, who gloated, "See, both Kevin and Carol are saying the same thing. So what will you do, Robert? If you're going to divorce, you can stay here," she said, glaring at me triumphantly. I braced myself to retaliate, but my husband spoke first. "Don't you just say whatever you want? Why does Sandra have to leave?" he said, his face red with anger, raising his voice. "Don't shout like that. It's better without a burden around, isn't it?" my mother-in-law retorted. But my husband responded in an exasperated tone. "You don't understand anything. This is Sandra's house." At my husband's words, my mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and his wife gasped. My husband continued, adding to the tension, "This is the house that Sandra bought for our life together." "What? What are you saying? Isn't it the husband's job to buy the house? There's no such rule. Moreover, Sandra covers all of Mom's allowance and living expenses. Sandra said she'd take on that burden because your pension is minimal, and it would be difficult for you to have financial freedom with just that," Robert explained, glaring at his mother-in-law with an intense expression. Despite this, my mother-in-law seemed to disbelieve, looking at me and snickering in disbelief. Unbelievable. Sandra just plays on the computer all day. She doesn't even do housework seriously. Wasn't my allowance coming out of my pension? Otherwise, there's no way Sandra could afford to give me $500 a month, she said. Moreover, my mother-in-law continued, "Sandra is the one managing my pension, isn't she? You might have told Robert otherwise, but I'm sure you're dipping into my pension," she accused, puffing up her chest and glaring at me. I glared back, not to be outdone. "It's true I've succeeded as a business owner. You're lying? Divorce this lying wife already. You should live here with me and Kevin and Carol. Besides, there's no proof that Sandra's earning money." "Here it is," she said, as I pulled out my paycheck and showed it to her. The sight of it left my mother-in-law, Kevin, and his wife slack-jawed. We've not used any of Mom's pensions since she moved in here. If Mom ever wanted to leave, Sandra has been managing it so she could live independently. But instead, Mom, you've been bossing Sandra around, interfering with her work. You're the problem. If you don't like Sandra, you should leave right now," Robert asserted. "I don't believe any of this," my mother-in-law insisted. "We don't mind if you and Kevin temporarily stay, but some patience should be expected. We didn't want you to live here in the first place. We only agreed because you begged us," Robert said, glaring at Kevin and his wife. Kevin and his wife broke out in a cold sweat, not used to Robert raising his voice. "Just kidding. But you sure are earning a lot, huh? I wish you could teach me some business tricks, right, Carol?" Robert said, lightening the mood. "Well, it's true, we were worried about living with our sister-in-law. It seems like she's a good person after all." Kevin and his wife smiled at each other. But my mother-in-law was unyielding. "Don't act so high and mighty. You're just a bum enough, Robert. You should leave too. You should go outside and see how harsh this world can be." My mother-in-law filled with conviction, refusing to listen to anything we said. Afterward, Robert and I sighed in disbelief. Interrupting her, I said, "Well, if that's how you feel, we'll pack our things and move to a new house. You guys will be stuck with a mortgage, but if that's okay with you, don't come crying to us for help. If you insist, mother-in-law will leave, even with a pension. Maintaining your lifestyle will be challenging. But I guess that can't be helped, can it?" At our words, my mother-in-law turned beet red and yelled at us to get out. "Wait, you can't be serious. We don't have to do that, do we?" we protested. Yes, if you two are here, we're safe." Kevin and his wife tried to stop us, but my mother-in-law gave us a fierce look and said, "Don't you dare talk back, Kevin. You're going to be a CEO, aren't you? I don't mind you using my pension, so just start a company and show us how successful you can become. I'll show you what happens when you defy us." My mother-in-law's words were filled with intensity. Hearing this, we decided it was best to no longer get involved with her or Kevin's family and left the house. Of course, the mortgage on the house remained, but we changed the ownership to Kevin's name. Some time had passed since then. While there was some residual dissatisfaction from that incident, having been free from my mother-in-law's sarcasm, we had resumed our normal routine. Just when we were working from home in our new apartment as usual, my mother-in-law called my husband crying. "Kevin has taken my pension and disappeared. He hasn't come back in a week. Carol and I are left alone in the house, and we're in trouble. Please help us," she wept. After my husband calmed my mother-in-law, he asked why Kevin had gone missing. I gave all of my pension to Kevin for his startup, but he ended up spending it all on gambling. When I confronted him about it, he disappeared, she cried out desperately. Since my mother-in-law couldn't continue the conversation through her sobbing, the phone was handed to Carol. "Could you please call us back? We can't live like this. Ever since Kevin failed his startup and sold the house we were living in, our parents have disowned us. My dad won't forgive us for selling that house. We haven't been able to reach either our dad or mom since," Carol pleaded with my husband. At the sight of them, my husband muttered, "I knew it," in a disgusted tone. "That's unfortunate, but don't involve us. We warned you when we left, didn't we? Even if you come crying to us, we won't help you. You can report Kevin as missing to the police. It's none of our business," he said, and then hung up. I was shocked, but my husband said they got what they deserved, and I agreed. After that, they called my husband's cell phone many times. When my husband, frustrated, answered the phone, Carol would cry about not knowing how to report Kevin as missing. We were surprised she didn't know and gave her advice to call the police. However, they still couldn't find Kevin. Just when we thought they might not find him, we heard that Kevin had been arrested for bank robbery in another state. Apparently, he did it to repay his debt. It seems it wasn't his first offense, and he would likely face actual jail time. Carol can't go back to her parents' home and is still living with my mother-in-law in that house. It's uncertain whether or not she will divorce Kevin. That's probably the least of her concerns right now. She registered with a temp agency and is struggling with her first job ever, but she's somehow making ends meet every day. As for my mother-in-law, Kevin took all of her pension, and now she has to repay his debt. She has also started working part-time to repay the debt. My husband and I expressed sympathy for my mother-in-law and sister-in-law's family, but we have made it clear that we have no intention of helping them, and we have cut off all communication. They must be tasting the harsh realities of life that my mother-in-law always talked about. Despite the changes since my mother-in-law moved in with us, my husband and I are glad that we have returned to our peaceful days.